Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. British Columbians are set to go to the polls this fall in a provincial election, and a new survey finds conditions for governing NDP comfortable but, quote, concerning. What are the biggest issues for you as we get closer to Election Day? Then in our second half, video games. They're a huge draw for kids of all ages, but how do you keep children safe, especially when they're online games? I'm Dan Burritt, in for Michelle Elliott all this week. Welcome to a Monday edition of BC Today. And thanks for joining us on CBC Radio 1, CBC Television, and live streaming on the CBC News app, as well as cbc.ca/BC. And don't forget the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. We're everywhere. So, 'tis the season for an election, a provincial election. A vote is expected sometime in the fall, possibly October, and there are many issues British Columbians are dealing with. The cost of living, housing, the environment, the economy, the poison drug crisis, and education, just a few of them. And a new survey from the Angus Reid Institute finds the ruling NDP is in a comfortable but potentially vulnerable position. Well, the opposition, BC United, and BC Conservatives are fighting various issues in a distant second. We want to hear from you now. What are the most important issues for you as a provincial election approaches? Who do you think is best equipped to handle your specific issues and others? Call us toll-free across our great big province, 1-800-825-5950. Our number in Metro Vancouver, 604-669-3733. That's in Metro Vancouver, pound 690 on your cell phone. Please be pulled over or hands-free if you're driving. You can also text us, 236-330-2623, and email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. Shachi Curl is the president of the Angus Reid Institute, and she joins us now. Nice to see you. Welcome.
Nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
So, lots of data in the latest survey. We should probably get through. This is an online survey of 809 BC adults who are forum members.
Yes.
And probability sample of this size, margin of error, what is it? Plus or minus 3 percentage points?
That sounds correct to me, Dan.
Okay. Well, it was in the news release, thankfully. So, first of all, what are the big findings? Maybe we start with the ruling NDP.
So it's good news, bad news for all of these parties. Some a little more bad news than good news, but good news for the provincial NDP. 7 years in, this is usually when that 7-year itch starts to kick in with BC voters. They are still leading 2-1 in vote intention over the main opposition parties. So 44% for the BC NDP, 22% for BC United under Kevin Falcon, formerly the BC Liberals, in case anybody needs to be reminded of that. And the BC Conservatives, which have sort of, floated in and out of the public consciousness over the years and election waves from time to time, all of a sudden at 22% tied with BC United.
So there's a lot going on here. Let's go back to the NDP for a moment. David Eby enjoying, fair to say, relatively decent popularity right now compared to John Rustad and Kevin Falcon?
Well, in terms of Premier's approval, any Premier that's sitting at over 40-45% will bank that. They'll say, yes, okay, thank you. We'll take that. Yes, correct. Yes, see everybody, see caucus, see cabinet, we're doing really good. But on all of those key issues that you just talked about in your intro, housing affordability, cost of living, climate change, healthcare, public safety, perceptions of public safety, public perceptions of crime, the NDP get basically failing marks on almost every single one of those issues. I feel like they've got a better than worse on dealing with the federal government. So, that's a ballot issue right there. That's what. No, it's not. So.
Well, and so many big issues that we're talking about, and we know that that among them we talked about housing. Let's get into the opposition, BC United, BC Conservatives. Certainly, we're seeing more ads, particularly, at least I'm seeing from Kevin Falcon on television and elsewhere. Haven't seen as many from the opposition or from the BC Conservatives. Is there an indication where we've seen two right-of-center parties like this, so we're essentially tied?
It's rare. We've seen it obviously in other provinces and other federal situations, other political situations. I think there was probably a place and time when the NDP and the Greens might have been tied in lore of BC elections past. However, what's challenging for BC United right now is they're being squeezed from both sides. So this is not your grandpa's NDP. This is an NDP government that has done a pretty effective job of trying to pivot and straddle the center. So it is center left, but it's trying to be more centrist than previous iterations of the BC New Democrats. The BC Conservatives have done a pretty effective job of trying to stake their claim in northern British Columbia, where political issues are different, they're seen through a different lens, and where, you know, they used to call it the heartland. The heartland doesn't often feel like it's being listened to. So you've got Kevin Falcon and BC United in the middle, trying to appeal enough to Metro Vancouver voters to punch through, trying not to lose that northern and interior flank. And really, that's why you're seeing that advertising. It's about branding.
Let's go to the calls now. John joins us from Nanaimo. John, what are your big issues heading into the election?
Quite frankly, rent controls and affordability on other issues. When the Liberals were in power, whatever they're called today, they brought in tolls on highways and bridges, and the NDP have got a rent control in place. And I'm sure that if the Conservatives gets in, that rent control is gone. That's basic bottom line. For somebody who's been renting for a number of years, that is really a concern for me.
John, if I can just get a scale of things, how tight are things for you right now when it comes to renting?
I'm a retired person. Like half my income goes to rent, but that's rent that was based on when I started here at this one place 7 years ago.
Yeah,
you know, it's the people, like I've got a 2-bedroom place. There's a person in the same building that rented a 1-bedroom, almost bachelor suite for the same amount of money that I'm paying for the 2-bedroom. So if we got displaced or burnt out or whatever, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
And John, may I ask finally, if election was today, who would you vote for and why?
I'd vote for the NDP.
Yeah,
because they would ensure that renters would get a fair deal.
All right.
So
Thanks, bro.
So that's it. I had to play.
Thanks for the call, John.
John's got people in background checking them on.
They want to weigh in. Interesting sentiments there, particularly around housing, Shachi. It's still so top of mind for so many people.
You know, it is the thing that really undid what was then the BC Liberals. Cast your minds back fully 10 years. And at that time, it was post-Olympics, we were seeing just the cost of buying a house. Or remember, people can't buy a house anymore. They can't buy a single family home on a lot anymore.
What is a detached thing? I don't understand it. Yeah.
And at the time, the message was very much, hey, things are booming. This is good for the province. All that yummy property transfer tax coming in. Ain't no thing here. Ain't nothing to see. I think the party is still having to just deal with the historical baggage and the luggage of that.
Sean is joining us from Vancouver. John, where are you leaning as we head into an election?
Oh, hi there. Yes. I sort of say I used to be somebody who was much more left-leaning until fairly recently, until the past, say, few years, especially. But just the absolute, undeniable hypocrisy of the left on so many issues, on almost any big issue you can name, it just become too much. And I think it's just not surprising that conservatism is the only viable option for anybody who's the least bit perspicacious and who can see, things are not what they tell us that they are.
Sean, can you give us an example of what you call the left's hypocrisy?
Oh, geez. The climate thing. I know it's a touchy issue, but when it's just one thing after another, one of these figures after another who flies around on the private jets, who obviously cares nothing about their impact on the climate. Who are still buying waterfront properties, themselves, multi-million-dollar investments, when they're insisting the oceans are going to be rising, 20 meters. It doesn't take, I think, very much common sense to look at that and see why it's all falling apart. The issue of addiction, the drugs, the constant free speech as well. My God, I'm sorry. Yeah, the bills they're trying to force on us now. The life imprisonment for people when we can't even imprison drug dealers with, I believe it was 20 or 30 kilograms of fentanyl. There was a case that was just recently dismissed by the court because of, legal delays, right? And yet now we're going to use our courts to go after people, for free speech. For criticizing or for
Sean, we're going to wrap it up there. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your call. There's a lot to say, and I appreciate that. Shachi, what can you tell us about people leaning more, perhaps if they are leaning right, to the BC Conservative Party? What is it there?
So I think there is a sense, number one, that the BC United is clearly not speaking for the issues that are important to them, particularly as BC United, as I go back to, is trying to also straddle a lot of the issues in that center area. So trying to talk about climate change, trying to talk about reducing harm around drug use and consumption, trying to talk about all of those things, but through the lens of a more fiscally conservative. Yes. So how do you, in the meantime, there's also just sort of the same feelings that trigger or excite or inspire people when they hear Pierre Poilievre talk federally conservatively. So, Sean was talking about what we can broadly call the culture wars, if you will, sure. Like a lot of those social values issues or what he sees as hypocrisy in those issues. It would be undeniable to suggest that there isn't some upward momentum being caused by, hey, this is already a strong area in BC Conservative strongholds. There are also federal Conservative strongholds, if you will. So, I would say that there's, in general, a level of sense of marginalization or disconnect among a lot of people in Canada, in British Columbia today, who don't feel like they're being heard, who feel like they're being finger wagged a lot. And I think, regardless of whatever John Rustad says or doesn't say, bears reminding for people who haven't been watching BC politics for as long as you and I, we're old, Dan.
Very much
we're
so.
We're very old. John Rustad is also a former BC United MLA, a former BC Liberal MLA for many, many moons. So,
and cabinet minister.
Yes,
right?
correct. Was forest minister, absolutely. Yeah.
We want to hear from you now. What are the big issues for you as we head into what is expected to be a provincial election in the fall? Give us a call now, 1-800-825-5950. That's across BC. Metro Vancouver, it's 604-669-3733. You can email us, bctoday@cbc.ca, pound 690 on your cell phone, or text us 236-330-2623. You mentioned, Shachi, some of the regional breakdowns around in the north and in northern regions where perhaps there's a stronger support for the BC Conservatives. Where do we see regional breakdowns when it comes to the island, Metro Vancouver? Where are the parties strongest and perhaps weakest?
So the parties are very much strongest. The BC NDP, if you will, is still strongest across a number of different regions. You see that they've got 50% of the vote in Metro Vancouver. You look at specifically the Lower Mainland, so just like Vancouver and environs, Burnaby, Richmond, North Van, Surrey, they're sitting at about 35%. So, sorry, I'm making a mistake here. So Metro, the center, 50%. Let's call it the exurbs.
Sure.
35%, still higher than any other party, although the BC Conservatives and the BC United, of course, again, are split. The island and the North Coast, we start to see some strength for the Green Party, polling at 22%. The NDP still very strong at 41%. And then in the North, and here's something very interesting. You still see in the interior and northern British Columbia, the NDP at 42%. So they're not really in a place of vulnerability in any particular region. But I just really want to stress, a week is a lifetime in politics.
Yep.
And so things could change, and it would be at David Eby and the NDP's peril to take any of this for granted today.
Concerns about complacency this far out from a vote? you think?
Always. Again, like we're into that 7-year period. I think it's notable that about half the province says it's time for a change. A change to what, however? There's the rub.
Yes.
And you're not seeing the consensus there. It's not the two-way race. We're not seeing yet voters coalesce. Now, what does the right of center do? Does it break ties with BC United and throw its support and horses and volunteers and money behind the BC Conservatives? Or do they look at the BC Conservatives and say, you're a fledgling party, maybe we don't think you're that serious or ready for prime time yet, and come back? But I would say that if this represents, in terms of, who's reacting to what coming out of this, the NDP is probably going, this is an okay day. Let's not get complacent.
Yeah, not bad.
The BC Conservatives are like, this is great. BC United probably having a bit of a gut check day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ruth is on the line in Hope. Ruth, what are your big issues for this?
Yeah,
Hello.
I had to call in when I listened to the. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi.
Sorry. I had to call in when I heard this gentleman talking about the Conservatives, and he just said so much and really made so few points. I think you had it right on there with the hypocrisy, and he didn't really explain. He didn't give any examples from what I could see about this so-called hypocrisy. I think that Kalon and EB are doing a wonderful job. I'm NDP, always have been. I was Green for a while, but I'm afraid excuse me, I am now NDP, and I think the whole problem, being retired, you get a lot of time to listen to the news and watch all the documentaries. I just watched a documentary, I think it was W5 or one of those, Fifth Estate, the other night, about all the immigration. And there's like 500,000 or 500 million probably people coming this way, migrants. Venezuela has collapsed. The whole world is coming this way, looking for help, looking to survive, and it's all from climate change, because we, as a population, since the Industrial Revolution, they knew 100 years ago about the carbon emissions, and nothing has really been done. And the NDP here, bring it back down to BC, they're doing a great job, and the housing doesn't happen overnight. They're going to create housing eventually, and the mental health is unbelievable, the overdoses and all that, because there's no housing and because of the social problems which come from too many people, 8 billion on the planet, and governments, tyrannical governments all over the world now, more and more with Putin.
Okay, so Ruth, can I,
sorry,
it's Shachi here. Hi, can I ask you 2 quick questions? First of all, for you, what would be the top issue for you? Like when you hear yourself.
I know I'm rambling.
No, you're not. No. Just want to. It's good to get the.
I said years ago the world population was just getting more and more, bigger and bigger, and we just got too many people.
Okay, so now that's a little bit bigger than what a provincial government might be able to tackle or address. So when you think about that provincial issue, you thought housing you mentioned.
Health.
Yeah.
Mental health.
Okay.
They've been apparently working on this, but I don't see much progress. I think because they can't find the people to do it.
Okay.
In every walk of society, there is a lack of people.
Ruth, we appreciate your call and your perspective. Thank you for listening, and hope you'll keep listening, keep watching the docs, especially by CBC. I want to note something we have reported in the past that, quote, by many standards, the influx of immigrants is a boon, especially given Canada's aging demographic, labor force shortages, and many economists agree the economy would not be able to sustain growth if it weren't for influxes of newcomers. Culturally, immigrants provide innovation and vitality to Canadian society.
And
We're
it's definitely not 500 million.
No,
because Canada's overall population is about 40 million. So we
would probably notice that.
That we'd probably say maybe that's a bit too much.
We have a lot of space.
Yes, yes.
All right, let's go to line 3. Will is joining us from Victoria. Will, what are your big issues?
Hi there. It's funny. I was motivated to call in by the same caller as the previous woman. You had a young man earlier who identified as formerly being a leftist and now, really strongly identifying with conservative parties. And I think his response was really telling, because he very quickly descended into climate change denial and conspiracy. And he really didn't say a lot of substance, but he had strong feelings about it. And I think that captures the gist of a lot of conservative parties in Canada at the moment. People are upset about things. There are a lot of substantial issues that we face, major challenges, which governments may not be dealing with as well as they could be. But conservative parties, by and large, aren't really offering anything by way of solutions, right? They're just allowing people to channel this anger, this upset, this post-COVID malaise in a particular direction, but there's nothing there. There's no there. Yeah. And so it's just really frustrating to hear, that falsehoods and conspiracies and lies being recirculated in these discussions when they're not helpful. They're not going to help us. And I think the onus is on conservative parties to really step up and do something more constructive, to actually put forward their ideas to how they're going to solve these problems instead of just, capitalizing on people's upset that the problems exist.
Will, can I ask quickly, what is your one or two major issues heading into the election?
Provincial issues.
Provincial, yes.
Yeah, so provincial issues, it's tough, right? Because the issues overlap and different governments have different pieces of these things. But
give us two, Will, real quick.
I'm a parent of a young child, and so for me, climate change is the issue that shapes all others. Climate change is the issue that touches everything else we care about and touches the future of my family and my child most directly. So I'm a climate change voter. I'm a green liberal in that sense, and that's what my priority is.
Okay. Will, thanks very much. We're going to squeeze in one more here. Dupinder is joining us from Surrey. Dupinder, what are your big issues as we head into the election?
Oh, thank you. So my name starts with B for Bob, Bhupinder. So
Bhupinder,
anyway,
my apologies, sir. Bhupinder.
No, it's all good, sir. I was sharing my views. Anyway, so historically, I'm living here since 1979, so I was not much satisfied with the track record of BC Liberals. All these folks, Kevin Falcon and the other fellow John, as you mentioned, they're out of the BC Liberals, so they got to work harder, to earn their vote. But I like NDP, and coming back to in Surrey, the hospitals, the doctors are saying themselves they have to wait hours and hours. So the other issue is the police, they should resolve this Surrey mayor as soon as possible. Taxpayers shouldn't be, why should we pay money for all these court battles? So the two big issues for me going forward would be this hospitals in Surrey and the other, the police. And I just want to mention, this federal government, they bring all these international students. There should be a referendum on the election asking, they should give this jurisdiction to the provinces. The provinces, based on their needs, they can decide how many students or how many refugees they want to bring. It shouldn't be a federal jurisdiction.
Very interesting issue, Bhupinder, given that we know in the province of Quebec, Quebec Premier François Legault has basically said, yeah, we want this. And the Prime Minister has said, no, go pound salt.
Yep.
So you might be out of luck, Bhupinder, on that one.
Appreciate your call, Bhupinder. Quickly from Nathan, who writes, I think the provincial government would do well to focus on our most disadvantaged and significantly increasing minimum wage. Or perhaps that's, and we've certainly heard questions about living wage before.
Yes.
Lots of issues on the table here in the plate, Shachi. When do you do another check-in before the election?
Well, we'll do another one for sure in 3 months, and then probably at a little bit regular intervals going forward after that, as we keep an eye on the numbers and hopefully what is a lovely patio season and not a smoky patio season. Interestingly, climate.
Yes.
So, what did I read a few days ago about maybe fires and the fire season upcoming becoming a potential election issue? And certainly, if people are feeling unsafe, that's going to be a very frontline referendum on how they feel the provincial government is responding to crisis. So lots of miles to go yet, kilometers. We're at the CBC, for goodness sakes.
There you go. Shachi Kurl, president of Angus Reid Institute. We appreciate your time and your expertise as always. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dan.
And it is, what now? 1:30 in the Mountain Time Zone, and you are listening to BC Today. Wildfires and drought are already on the minds of people in BC. Premier David Eby and Agriculture Minister Pam Alexis today announced $80 million in new funding for farmers facing drought conditions. The funding is on top of $20 million from last summer that funded over 100 water storage projects, and it's meant to go toward making water infrastructure systems like irrigation more efficient. Here's the Premier speaking earlier today.
The climate here in BC is changing really rapidly. We are seeing records set for everything from drought to snowfall to heat. And what we are hearing from experts is that this summer might be a very difficult one for British Columbians. And that's everything from cumulative effects of low snowpack to drought and drier summers and higher temperatures. I hope that we don't need any of this. I hope that we see lots of rain. I hope we see lots more snow before the end of the winter, and that we're going to have a normal season. But 2 of the 3 worst fire seasons this province has ever seen, have happened in the last 36 months. And many parts of the province are at the highest level of drought and dryness that our current scales measure. So we are going to be prepared. We're going to support the people that we depend on and who depend on us for their support, and make sure that this province works better together for everybody.
And that was Premier David Eby speaking earlier today about increased funding for fighting drought conditions. This is BC Today on CBC. You are on Radio 1, CBC Television, and live streaming on our website, cbc.ca/BC, as well as on YouTube at CBC Vancouver, and of course on the CBC News app. Coming up, and thank you for joining us on BC Today. Coming up in our second half hour, what do you know about video games? Do you have kids or people in your life that play them? And how do you keep them safe online? That is after the CBC News Update with Susan McNamee.
Good afternoon. It is 12:32. This is CBC Radio 1, 690 AM, 88.1 FM in Vancouver. In the headlines, we should know more shortly about how the province plans to deal with the challenges of extreme weather. Government officials and environment specialists are set to provide an update in about half an hour on the snowpack and the forecast for drought and fire conditions. Earlier this month, forecasters had noted that the province is currently at the second lowest average snowpack in history. Meanwhile, the provincial government has committed an additional $80 million to help farmers and ranchers deal with drought. The money will help build water storage and buy the equipment farmers told the province they need. The province says the actions will benefit stream flows, fish populations, and support more sustainable food production. More than 36 BC communities set new temperature records yesterday. Abbotsford hit 21.5 degrees, breaking the record set in 1947. It was 15.1 degrees in the Vancouver area. That's almost 1 degree warmer than the previous record set way back in 1900. Speaking of the weather, let's take a look at the forecast on the south coast. Another sunny day, highs of 21 near the water, up to 21 inland. For the central interior, mainly sunny, a high of 14. Tuesday, cloudy with a 30% chance of showers in the afternoon, a high of 8. For the southern interior, sunny and warm for you, with highs ranging from 18 to 22. Tomorrow will be sunny, a high of 19. Up in the Peace, mainly sunny, some strong winds coming your way with a high of 13 today. And for the Kootenay region, sunny with a high of 19. Clear skies tomorrow and a high of 17. That's a brief look at the BC News headlines and the BC weather. I'll be back at 1 with more, but right now it's back to BC Today. Filling in this week, Dan Burrett.
Nice to see you, Miss McNamee. How are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing great. You have a nice sunny weekend?
Beautiful weekend, a nice St. Patrick's Day. Celebrated
yes.
a little bit my heritage there.
Very good. And what was on the menu?
Irish stew, Irish coffee.
Bad manners not to.
Irish cream, Irish whiskey, a lot of Irish.
Oh, wow. In a shocking twist. That's lovely.
It was fun, all in moderation.
Yes,
and
of course. Yeah.
Whiskey, you know, is being spelt W-H-I-S-K-Y or
Yes.
W-H-I-S-K-E-Y. Do you know why and the difference?
I don't, but I do know that the Irish spell it with an E.
They do indeed, and the States, but Scotland,
Yes.
they go no E.
No E, as does Canada with rye whiskey.
And Scotland, Japan, Canada, all with no E. So there you go.
There's your whiskey lesson for the day, folks.
Learned a little something over the dinner table. Nice to see you, Dan.
Good to see you too, Susan. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us on CBC Radio 1, live streaming on the CBC News app, cbc.ca/BC, and on the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. Hello to everyone in North Bend in the Fraser Canyon listening to us at 90.7 FM, and good day to you in Sayward listening on 6:30 a.m. Keeping kids safe online is a big concern facing many parents and guardians. But they may not know where to start or how to keep the conversation going, let alone any controls. The BC government is taking a number of steps, including a proposed law to let it seek damages for what it deems healthcare costs from tech companies for alleged harms. We brought back Tiana Sharifi, CEO of the Exploitation Education Institute, to take your calls and questions. And we're talking today about online safety and video games. And we'd love to hear from you. What are your experiences with video games? What about kids or children in your lives? What do you want to know about avoiding online abuse or exploitation while playing video games that are online? You can call us right now, 1-800-825-5950 across BC. Our phone number in Metro Vancouver, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone, and you can email bctoday@cbc.ca. And if you want, fire us a text, 236-330-2623. And Tiana Sharifi is in studio with us. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
So first of all, to clarify, how are kids being targeted in online streaming video games?
Yeah, so what's really interesting is we typically think about exploitation and grooming happening on social media platforms, much rather than these games that actually seem quite innocent and are tailored for children and youth. And so what we see with these online games is that you have predatory people with different intentions, whether they're looking for blackmail or to create child sexual abuse materials or to groom. And what they do is that they target these children on these different platforms, and they build trust and relationships. And through that, they're either grooming the child on that platform to engage in inappropriate behaviors, or they ask the child to switch to a different platform where further harm happens.
Mm-hmm. What age range are we talking about?
Oh, honestly, as young as that child is on that platform. So we are seeing around 8 to 15 years of age when it comes to the online gaming platforms, specifically because that's just the age that tends to be on those.
Yeah. And when it comes to, I want to get your thoughts on the announcement last week from Attorney General Nikki Sharma, the public health, they're calling it the Public Health Accountability and Cost Recovery Act, aimed at holding companies whose products are alleged to cause harm to children and adults liable. What do you make of the legislation as far as we know now?
I think it's wonderful. It's a great first step, especially because we're now recognizing that online does harm. The danger and the risks to safety that we might really raise our alarm bells on in person, it's just as important to do that online as well. So I think it's a really great first step for us to show that we want to hold these corporations accountable, because at the end of the day, us parents can only do so much. And I think that we're really seeing the advocacy of parents and the community being reflected in this legislation.
You called it a first step. What more would you like to see?
It's a great first step, but to me, prevention is key. And so this is the end of the equation, where we want to make sure that we have justice and supports for anybody who's been victimized. But the ideal is the prevention. So, having mandated education on the topic is important. Even holding these corporations accountable in terms of their age verification, their parental controls, the censorship and the accessibility that they provide, and making sure that we're really preventing potential exploitation from happening.
Based on the research that you've done, how much prevention do any of these companies do, if they do any?
They don't do any. That's a great
question. None that you found?
No. So they do, what they have is, a lot of these main platforms do have a parent's guide or some kind of a parent manual that they update once in a while, and that's really great. But parents would have to go and seek that out on their own. We don't see the government really mandating streamlined education across the province and across the country. And we don't see these platforms raising awareness about the risks when it comes to using their platform and how they combat it. So that's really the piece that's missing.
We know that there are some very popular games out there. Fortnite, for example, we've got Minecraft. But for the gaming companies themselves, Roblox, Epic Games, you didn't intimate it. It really is on the parent or guardian to put that out there. So is there any incentive outside of this proposed legislation that you've seen that these companies ought to act?
That's a great question. And quite honestly, I think that it's only through these legislations and when we see cases go to court that it really scares the companies into taking action, realizing that they are being held accountable. So that's, again, why it's so important that we're seeing these steps being taken.
Give us a call now. Do you have children? Are you a guardian, a parent? Are you dealing with young people that are playing video games? Are you concerned about their safety online? Give us a call, 1-800-825-5950. 604-669-3733 is our number in Metro Vancouver. Pound 690 on your cell phone. Please be pulled over or hands-free if you call. You can email us, bctoday@cbc.ca, and text us at 236-330-2623. Tiana, your company has released what you call a prevention project. Tell us a bit about that. How does it work?
Yes, so exciting. So this was an initiative in collaboration and partnership with us at Exploitation Education Institute and Ally Global Foundation. And we essentially sought that we don't have easily accessible information and resources that are engaging and fun and lighthearted that anybody can access across Canada in terms of prevention on this topic. And so we wanted to create an innovative approach to that. So we've created something called the Prevention Project. And it's essentially a really fun, interactive, engaging hub of animated online courses, essentially, on every topic pertaining to exploitation. And we're really wanting to harbor this development of understanding healthy relationships in person and online. So on this platform, anybody can use it, parents can use it, teachers can use it. It's free, no registration required. You just go to the preventionproject.ca, and there you're able to click the grade. So we start as young as grade 3.
About 9 years old?
Exactly, yeah, about 7 to 8 years old, and all the way to grade 12, and it's age appropriate depending on the age you are, and you can click on so many different topics, and what we've done is that we've actually described and explained these issues in multiple ways for each topic, because sometimes we have to repeat the information in different ways for it to be effective. Did
you have kids involved in the planning of this the prevention project?
Yeah, so we did show a couple of our approach and some of our animated videos with the kids. We also were in consulting with survivors and other experts that are in the school district, and so it was really amazing to see the feedback and the effectiveness of these tools, and also the fact that, kids don't learn unless they're having fun and there's humor involved. And so it's great to see that interaction with the content.
For those who are wondering, what is the challenge of making something interactive and fun for kids, but at the same time, making sure they understand the dangers that exist out there? Yeah, that's a great question. And so what we've found, we provide prevention education presentations across the province, and our approach is lighthearted and engaging. And what we found is that there are times that we want to talk about something serious, but in order to get there, in order to engage, we have to have a little bit of humor. And so what we've done is that when we're talking about something like sextortion, for example, there might be a little bit of humor in the very beginning, but then it gradually increases. And so we've engaged the child, and then we've taken them along this emotional ride, essentially, of what could potentially happen online, while keeping things from a place of no judgment and no shame. That's not an easy thing to do, is it? No, it's not. Let's go to Mike in Prince George. Mike, thanks for calling. What is your experience with video games and young people?
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. I've been a gamer since the early days, the 70s, with Pong and whatnot. Video You're a veteran. I've always been a veteran, exactly. And I took pretty serious interest in a lot of the games my kids were playing. It helped me bond with them on their level, something they enjoyed, and I did as well. And, as things started to get pretty serious with cases like the Amanda Todd case and other terrible things going on there, it really, kind of clicked with me to make them aware of what could happen online. And, things that are online are kind of forever. So, Mike, how did you do that? How did you engage with them? Around the dinner table talks and stuff like that. I knew what I was speaking of because I played a lot of the games that they played. I'd play way below my level games just to see what was out there. Things like Club Penguin, when they were quite small, all the way up through, the Call of Duty. Some of these chat lobbies and things like that are just atrocious to begin with. So it gave me some fodder to converse with them about what was going on and the good and the bad points about it. So if you're not invested in your kids' gaming activities, what they're doing when you're not around, I really think as a parent you should be, especially in the digital age.
Mike, what would be your advice to parents or guardians who don't play video games and how they should approach this?
They don't have to play them, but you should find out about what your kids are doing. It gives you a leg to stand on, something that'll let them open up to you. If you know a little something about it, you can just get your foot in the door. You'll find this, the feedback you'll get from them will be surprising, and you'll be able to open that conversation.
And what would be, lastly, Mike, we really appreciate your time. What would be your approach to kids playing these online games when they're interacting with others?
Just to be aware that, it might seem like pretend, but there's a very real underlayer to the whole thing. And be as cautious as you would anywhere, walking around a new neighborhood or things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mike, we really appreciate your time and your perspective, and thank you for being a video game veteran. I think you've given us a lot to think about. Tiana, what do you make of what Mike recommended?
Mike, I just want to commend you. I think that what you've done and really engaging with your kids on those platforms is exactly what we want to see, and what we've noticed is really helpful. I think that your tip is actually one of the ones that we promote to parents as well. You don't have to know how to use these platforms or these games, but just take 30 minutes of at the very least watching your child play the game so that you really understand what the platform looks like, what they have access to, if there's a chat going on, and then from there you're able to discuss more about their behaviors online and what they should look out for. So I think that's absolutely fantastic that you've done that.
Tiana, what are the warning signs for parents and guardians that perhaps kids are getting into something that they ought not to be, they're being approached in inappropriate ways?
Yes. So before we even get to that, I do want to emphasize to parents that any game, even one that is created for a child and is seemingly innocent, can turn exploitative if there's access to other people, which all of these gaming platforms have. So just if your child is on something like Roblox, for example, and again, seemingly innocent game, we want to make sure that you understand that there could be risks associated because of the people that are on those platforms. So some things that you want to look out for, that you want to talk to your child about, is what's normal and what's not normal. So in terms of what's not normal, it's not normal for somebody to ask for you to add them on your phone through text or on a different type of platform. So if you're gaming with somebody that you don't know in person, and all of a sudden they're saying, add my number, let's chat, let's text, or let's go to Discord, let's go to Snapchat, that's a really big red flag. The other one is that if you're in a platform or you're in a chat group discussion that turns sexual, with people, again, that you don't know in person, that's one of those really big red flags that we want to look out for. So it's really about keeping in mind if somebody is wanting to isolate you, take you out of the game. If somebody is wanting to engage you in sexual and inappropriate behaviors, and again, they don't know you in person, what would the intention be? And this is even if you enter a game and you're seeing the avatars of that game engaging in sexual activity. That in itself is also predatory. And anybody that's wanting to offer you things. So if somebody's wanting to give you Robux or, any kind of gaming tokens and offering that kind of gifting, those are the things that we really want to look for.
And a lot of that is unprompted, we're assuming, right?
Yes,
like
exactly.
Out of the blue. This is not coming from a friend or somebody that they know actually when they're playing.
Exactly. And what happens is, and we have to be mindful about this, is that these gaming platforms, they really create an environment of friendship and camaraderie, right? Because you're playing a game together. And so we have to be mindful of, it's not just don't talk to strangers. Well, I might have a friend and that friend might have a friend that they trust and they bring into the game. And so then naturally I might trust that person. So we want to really define what somebody that is a stranger, so-called stranger online really is for those kids, and be mindful that, that's the part of grooming, is building that trust and relationship with the kids.
Are you a parent or guardian? Do you have young people in your life that are playing video games, particularly those who are really that are online? Whatever it is, give us a call now. How do you protect them? Do you know how? Are you looking for resources? Give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733 in Metro Vancouver. You can call us on cell, pound 690. Please be pulled over, hands-free. Email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. And you can text us, 236-330-2623. Tiana, are there upsides to this technology? And if so, what are they?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, is that with every kind of tool, there's going to be positives. So, there are actually educational games on things like Roblox. There's the ability to play with friends and create connections and friendships and have a sense of belonging. We just have to keep in mind that those same needs that are getting fulfilled in healthy ways could also be exploited in unhealthy ways on those platforms. So, of course, it's not that the game itself is bad. It's just, again, we have to be mindful of, well, there are unhealthy people on those platforms. There are predatory people on these platforms. We know that is where they go, wherever kids are. And we have to really inform our kids about the trends and the risks. And then us as parents, making sure that we're going to every game that our child is playing on, and going into all of them, especially the main ones. They have a parent manual or a fact section on their webpage that tells you about how can you make sure that the chats are private, how can you limit games to only the people that you know, and then having those conversations again with your kid about what is safe and not safe and what's expected of them.
If and when things take a concerning turn for a child who's playing an online game, what are some of those warning signs that parents or guardians ought to keep an eye out for?
So if we're talking about how do you know that your child is being exploited? So what we tend to see is that all of a sudden that child will have a lot of anxiety or depression. They'll start to keep to themselves more. They might not want to talk or be around the dinner table as much. They might not be hanging around their friends as much. And this is what we notice when we go and give presentations in schools as well, is that when a child has come forward to us and they tell us that they've been exploited, what's happened is that they've been holding on to it for a while. They have a lot of shame coming forward about it. And so you start to see that shame manifest itself in different ways. So if you feel like your child is just not acting like themselves, or they're only on these devices in their room, or they're very tired compared to what they usually are, those are some signs that you want to have a conversation with your kid and really ask what's going on and let them know that if ever they get into trouble online, that it's not their fault and you're there to help them.
Is the shame, on a scale of concerns, is where does the, because you've mentioned it a couple of times, the idea around shame and not wanting to be embarrassed, where does that rank in terms of the feelings that kids have when they have been exploited?
I think it's number one. I think that's, and unfortunately, I think that's a leading cause of the suicide that ends up happening when somebody is sextorted, from the stories that we've seen. And so, and a lot of times we're not intending to create shame with our kids. We're wanting to inform them and we want to keep them safe as much as possible. So sometimes we want to create a little bit of a fear there or consequences. But what's really important for us to understand is that our kids need to know and believe that they will, if they're in trouble like that they're a victim, that there is no shame, they're not at fault, even if they made a decision that wasn't a good decision, that it is not their fault, and that there's nothing to be embarrassed about. And then unfortunately, when we're online, something like that at some point is, we're bound to come across these things. And so them really feeling like we're a trusted person that is not going to punish them for coming forward is really huge.
In your research, can you give us a sense of the scale of this problem? Like, are we talking about tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of kids that are potentially or actually being exploited? How big is the problem?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because when you look at statistics, recently Canadian Statistics Canada came out and said that there has been 40,000 or over 40,000 reports for, I think it was from 2022, sorry. And, unfortunately, it's it's not representative of the true numbers, because even when we look at statistics and police reports, that means somebody had to have come forward. So what we see when we go into schools is it's a much larger issue than we think. And most of the time when kids share their stories with us, it's the first time that they're sharing. And it's every school that we've gone into, and it's kids as young as grade 5. Anybody that gets access to a device, again, at some point has those risks. So I definitely think it's something that we have to be mindful of. It's very prevalent. And we can't, we can't be passive parenting when it comes to the digital space.
And lastly, for people who want to find your resources, where can they do that?
Yeah, so our website is exploitationeducation.org, and we have prevention presentations that are approved by the Ministry of Education. We educated 30,000 children and youth last year in BC, which was really great. And we have free resources there, but you can also go to the preventionproject.ca for those amazing, fun, innovative, animated resources that are free to access across the country.
Tiana Sharifi, we really appreciate your time, the CEO of the Exploitation Education Institute, and your expertise. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
That is it for our show. Thank you for calling and emailing and joining our discussion. You can always email us, bctoday@cbc.ca.